Partnering pedagogy. We are all learners, we are all teachers. Teaching digital natives. Partnering for real learning. Partnering pedagogy is the end of outdated instruction. Partnering is conceptualizing learning in a new way. You may also know partnering as constructivism, active learning, problem or project based learning, inquiry based learning, student centered learning, or learning by doing. Inquiry-based learning dates back to Socrates, was explored further by John Dewey, and can be brought into your classroom using the partnering pedagogy. Partnering lets students and teachers focus on the part of the learning process that they each can do best by changing the roles of the classroom. In a partnering classroom, student plays many different roles. A student is the researcher, responsible for finding information and following their own passions. Students are technology users. They know how to use technology effectively and responsibly, and they create presentations. Students are thinkers and sense makers. They answer guiding questions, make meaning, and create connections. Students are world changers. Through sharing their thoughts and real life applications of what they're learning, students see directly how the content they learn can be applied to their own lives. In the partnering classroom, the teacher is the role of the coach and the guide. They are the motivators and the helpers. They are the goal setters and the questioners. Teachers create guiding, open-ended, complex Socratic questions for their students to answer. They are the designers of the learning. They are the instructional experts. They provide rigor and context. They make content real and meaningful and create a minimum floor of expectation of quality of work. As the quality assurer, they evaluate and critique their students' work. Making the switch to a partnering classroom means going from sage on the stage to guide on the side. By providing variety for students, say rearranging the way your classroom is set up, literally moving the desks to create teams, pairs, and different stations, and by sharing your results through presentations to others, you can make the switch from your regular classroom to a partnering classroom. There's many different levels of partnering. We start with guided partnering, which is scaffold and more structured with specific presentation requirements. Moving on to basic partnering, which is more commonly thought of as inquiry-based learning, with high-level open-ended questions, supported responses, and reflection and discussion sessions at the end of each class. Going on to advanced partnering, which can be problem-based learning or project-based learning, and is useful for long-term unit studies once you have the basics of partnering mastered. Nouns and verbs in are terms we use when we talk about partnering pedagogy. Verbs are the skills for the students to master, the what they're trying to learn is the focus of the guiding questions. The nouns are tools for the students to learn or practice the verbs. How are we going to learn these skills? Partnering verbs. This is a pretty extensive list, some things you might already know as a no-brainer for what your students should be learning, some things you might not have thought about so explicitly. Um, there's several different categories: researching, managing information. We're talking about analyzing, exploring, reading, searching, finding, verifying, watching, listening. Thinking effectively, we're teaching these critical thinking skills. So we need to be teaching students to be calculating, comparing, evaluating, experimenting, reflecting, thinking critically and logically using those Socratic questions. Partnering verbs include communicating and presenting. So we're talking collaborating, connecting, cooperating, debating, listening, negotiating, sharing. And also, another important part is constructing and creating, which is adapting and designing, imitating, innovative, trying, making, um, this whole process. We always start with the verbs in a partnering classroom. Moving on to the nouns. Nouns are the tools that we use to answer the guiding questions, practice skills, and make presentations. This kind of technology is always changing. These are just a few of the examples. You might be familiar with some of them, you might not be. You do not have to be an expert at these nouns to use them in your classroom. However, students deserve, as 21st century students, technology is their birthright. This is how they live their lives. They're used to these tools more than you are, possibly. Let your students be the technology experts. Never use these nouns for your students. It is their job in the partnering classroom. So, what does partnering look like in action? The living roles of the teacher and the student. We talk again about the teacher being a guide, coach, and an expert in all these different areas, whereas students are researchers. They are focused on finding, evaluating, synthesizing, and presenting information. We use differentiated instruction to find student passions and use them to drive our lessons, to um, make them personal and individual for each different student based on what's going to engage that particular individual with this topic. What connection can they make in their life? We also use the term iteration, which is trying, changing, and sharing new ideas. As you're switching over to this partnering classroom, it's a trial and error process, and it's important to discuss with not only your peers and colleagues to find what they're doing and what's working in their classroom, but talking with your students and finding out what they think, and things that they could think could be better, things that they would prefer left being left out. This is part of the reflecting process. So, keeping it real, we want to talk about how partnering makes learning real by using real world tools to access, analyze, create, and share the context. A topic can be relevant to a student without being real. Being relevant means that students can relate the content to something familiar, they understand the context. Whereas real content, students see the connection between what they're learning and their ability to use that to do something useful in their world to affect their life. So we're talking about the application of a lesson versus a surface understanding. Creating guiding questions, translating the content to make explicit connections to skills. Um, One of the key elements of inquiry based learning is creating these questions for students. It is the job of the teacher to create these questions. We need big overarching questions. Basically, you could summarize these as the goals, the objectives of the lesson. These questions are open ended, complex questions that combine content knowledge with skills and tools, something that students can't answer simply. And then we need several other detailed supporting questions that are task oriented, that have lots of different solutions and implications, and that they're adaptable. Um, Questions that will challenge students to think and work. Tools of the trade, implementing technology in the classroom. When we get to the point where we're going to use these nouns in the classroom, teachers have their roles, students have their roles. The student's role is to use and master the available technology to answer the questions and master the skills. As teachers, we inform the students of the available technology. We make sure by our planning that we plan far enough in advance to make tools available to all students by maybe providing time in class or giving resources outside class. Teachers help students choose the best and most appropriate tools for the task, and we also need to be encouraging and maybe later on requiring a variety of different tech tools in each lesson. We watch for rigor and we assess how the students are using the tools. There's lots of tons and tons of tools, but some that are listed that are some of the most important. Web 2.0 refers to how we use the web as a medium not only for listening and reading, but also for speaking and publishing, through presentations like this one, through YouTube videos, how what we put out on the internet is almost as important as what we take away from it. Another consideration is the 1-to-1 ratio. It's happening in a lot of schools, especially in our area. If it's not happening now, it will be happening soon. Plan for how we use technology in the classroom, assuming that every student has their own device and access. Also, cell phones, the computer in your student's pocket. 9 out of 10 students have a cell phone. Um, whether or not your district has strict cell phone usage policies, how you might can get exceptions made, what apps you can use, what's available. Going on, create is the goal of partnering classroom. Students are working to create solutions and tangible answers to questions. By using technology as a vehicle to express learning and creativity, we're presenting to a real audience, to peers, to teachers globally when we post something on the internet. So we're getting that instant feedback and interaction. Contributing original ideas is what it's all about. We want to aim high and expect great things from our students because they can give great things. Students live up to expectations. So, when you're making the switch to a partnering classroom, it takes practice. We talked about iterating, trying new things, removing the things that don't work, is create this loop of instant and constant feedback with students and other teachers. Mixing it up, variety keeps interest. So, teachers are practicing their roles of guiding, coaching, questioning, and students are practicing their skills, making connections, becoming self-directive learners. So, as how do you make assessments in a partnering pedagogy? There are different types of assessment. Formative assessments are what most classes are used to. It's necessary and helpful feedback. Ipsative assessments of show students how they have personally improved in different areas. This is encouraging for them to see their own individual progress. Peer assessments are important in a partnering classroom to get feedback from their students, from other students. We have a real world audience, we have a global audience we can get feedback from in a partnering classroom through the internet. And self assessments, knowing your own progress, knowing your own strengths and weaknesses are important for both students and teachers in the partnering classroom. I hope this has been helpful in understanding how a partnering pedagogy is possible in your classroom.